Okay, we all set?
Yeah, here's that.
All right, hello LTV. So it's 6:05. I'd like to call our budget hearing meeting to order. Linda, would you do roll call, please?
Sure. Barbara Dayton. Timothy Frazier. Patrick Brabant.
Yep.
David Conlon. And Amy Rivera.
Here.
Thank you. And if we could all rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So we will start a presentation on the budget for the upcoming school year.
All right, let me get over here so I can flip these screens around. All right, the proposed budget for 22-23, this summarizes it in the basic components of administration, capital, and program. It lists there the different items that make up administration, capital, and program. What I've done below on the table is I've split the program into two parts, one being the tuition that we pay to other public schools, and then the other one for all of the expenses related to providing education to the students here at Spring School. So you can see that the program component for K-12 tuition is is about a third of the total budget for both years. So it's a significant piece of our budget. So we're looking at a $32,888,886 total appropriation budget, which is up 6.78% from the year before. And in order to fund that budget, these are the estimated summary of the estimated revenues and tax rate. The non-tax revenues, which include the tuition, state aid, and other components that are not levies on the tax bill, are roughly about 3.2 million last year, almost 8 million this year, which came up to an 18.12% increase. And then the tax levy, which includes STAR, we don't break it out at this point because we don't know what the final STAR number is going to be. It's 29,096,126 versus last year's 27,589,155, which is a 5.46% increase over last year's tax levy, which is right at the tax cap. The estimated tax rates are in the last line, $1,116.07 per thousand of assessed value versus $1,169.61 of per thousand of assessed value, which is actually a 4.8% increase on the tax rate. And the main reason for that is we did just last week, we got the latest assessed values from the town, and the assessed value did go up a little bit, which has the impact of lowering the tax rate itself. Tax levy at 5.46%, which is tax compliant. Trying to break it out to give taxpayers a little bit of an idea what it might cost. So if you look at a house in the around $344,000, you're looking at a $2,339.22 tax levy. You go up to a house that's roughly $1,379,310 in estimated fair market value. It'll have a tax rate of levy of $9,356.88. Again, the average from last year we're looking at the average house in Springs being $802,586, corresponding assessed value of $4,655, and a corresponding tax itself of $5,444.53. And again, that's before any credits for STAR. The contingent budget, if we have to go to a contingent budget, this is pretty much our worst case scenario. We would have to cut $2,644,329 out of the budget, and it would bring us down to a $30,244,557. The trick on a contingent budget is we cannot have an overall tax levy assessment any greater than what it was last year. It has to be the same or less. So by taking money out of the appropriations would help lower it. Another option that the board might have, which might change this a little bit, is if we could use some of the reserves and use some of the reserve money to offset the loss in revenue from the taxes. We don't have a lot to play with, but that is an option. Important dates: the annual meeting and vote is next Tuesday, the 17th. Polls open at 1 p.m. and they close at 9 p.m. And the vote will be held here in the library. And that's it.
Great, thank you very much, Mike.
Mike, what are the amounts of the reserves?
Oh, I don't have that with me, but we've got several different reserve items. We've got the capital reserve that we can't really touch. We have the repair reserve. Again, that takes certain tax votes in order to pull money out. But some of the areas that we could possibly use: ERS reserve, TRS reserve, workers' comp reserve, to help pay for any of the premiums or costs associated that those reserves can handle. Would we be able to draw those down? But that's about really it. We can't touch the costs that are set aside in the reserves for post-employment benefits. That's pretty much locked in. Trying to think what other reserve we have out there.
But those reserves, they would have to cover expenses
They have
that
to
those
cover-
reserves are geared for.
Correct.
They can't be taken out
Correct.
for equipment or something like that.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so I'm looking probably at about $700,000 to $725,000 worth of those reserves to offset the expenses that they're there to reserve against.
Right, so it's still way below
we had to,
2.3.
And then you've also got the 4% undesignated
Yes.
fund balance that could also be depleted. I don't really suggest that because,
No.
you know, you just may need that money. It's only a little over $1 million, but that $1 million goes fast. Won't even cover a payroll for a month.
Well, that did cover us during COVID, so we got funded, didn't it?
We had dipped down into it for a little bit during COVID, and it took us a bit to get it back up to that 4%. We're right now at that 4%.
There's no COVID funds available next year right now, right?
We're using 1.4 million of the current money's surplus to help keep the tax levy down. You know, again, we keep analyzing and looking, and the fund balance estimate isn't changing very much at all. Maybe about 10,000 here or there, unless there's a big surprise where we've got monies encumbered in POs and we find out we're not going to need that money and we can liquidate the PO, creating more of a surplus. We're not going to really have anything more than the 1.4 that we're planning on using.
Right.
No, I mean, I think it's good to answer those questions here and answer those questions now. There's not a lot of public here. This is NLTV.
Yeah.
The budget's in 2 weeks, and here we have these reserves.
Budget's in a week.
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah.
Well, we do have another meeting tomorrow night. Work
That's a
session.
work
Right,
session.
yeah.
But there's no public here. And
I think the other thing we didn't mention in here are the other propositions. We got a proposition that's going to go before the voters for to purchase another bus at not to exceed $135,000 and use bands to pay for it in the future. We've got a proposition to take money out of the capital reserves, the repair reserve, for the kindergarten playground.
Put it on a playground.
Right.
We'll be discussing the kindergarten playground some more tomorrow night.
A little more detail.
But that was already earmarked
That
really
was
for
already
the
earmarked.
playground.
Right, right.
We've got public vote for the school roof repair. We wait till after.
No, that was last year. That was
That was
approved
last year already,
year.
so we already.
So we're already approved. We're good to go with that. We're just trying to get all of the little remaining I's dotted and T's crossed so that the contractor can move forward.
Right, but that money's in the capital.
It's in the
reserve,
capital, that's right.
in the reserve of funds. We
And
can't
It's
withdraw
actually,
that.
it's already been allocated and put in the capital fund as its own separate project. So the money's in the capital fund ready to roll.
Which is good because, I mean, most of the stuff, public information, we have it on the website, and people understand that they see a large capital of $800,000
Mhm.
that is going to a repair reserve, you know, that we already voted on last year.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
already,
not excess funds in the
No,
capital
no.
reserve.
no, it was approved for 1.1 million.
Right.
And last year, we moved that 1.1 million out of the reserve over to the capital fund. So it's sitting there. And again, if the project comes in, if the projects come in at 800,000 and there's no other overages, we're gonna have extra money left over that's gonna go back to the reserve fund.
We won't know that until after the
Yeah,
budget.
until
though.
they
No,
finish,
we won't
right.
know that until after the project gets
Project's
completed.
done.
Completed, right. That's,
There's a lot of moving parts.
No, there is,
there
and, it's nice you have this meeting tonight, it's an informal meeting, but it's also the last one, like I said, it's a week away on the budget vote. And you throw a lot of numbers out there, but not giving, I don't see the full picture of what you really explain it. People only catch part of this meeting, and they don't
Right.
catch a month ago, or they don't catch a month before, they might miss it. Now come up with a budget vote, wait a minute, they have excess dollars and all these reserves, why are we not using that?
Right.
And, we said the board meetings, we understand it a little bit, but a lot of public doesn't understand
Yeah,
that. The
yeah, I
voting
mean,
public.
honestly,
Those are the stakeholders in this community.
I'm hoping, for the sake of Springs, that the legislature does pass so that you have some sort of a reserve for your tuition.
Yes, I know they're trying to work
Right.
on
Because
it.
Yeah.
that thing is so volatile, and we just really can't absorb much of it in the regular budget.
Right.
If we had a reserve, we had money tucked aside, we could absorb some of that.
Now, when do we have to renegotiate tuition again?
We got,
2 years left?
2 more years after this, yeah.
And we thought that was, good planning on our part to at least know what the percent would be every year.
Right.
Yeah, the rate, we got the rate lock in, it's the population, we
Right.
just don't know.
Yeah. And that's not anything we can guarantee every year. No one can tell us that.
No,
Yeah.
All your best laid plans for demographic reports, nobody could have foreseen what we saw out here on the East End.
Right.
What gets me is there's a huge population increase in certain areas, but there's still no employment. There's nobody taking jobs.
It's
Yeah.
very interesting, Pat. There was a big article about that. They seem to be either working remotely at their old jobs or actually semi-retired and not even looking to do part-time work.
No, but it's easy. The semi-retired usually don't have students come to the school. We're seeing an increase of 50 kids coming into the school districts, like we did with the high school. We have an increase here, but, everybody's looking for help. The town's looking, every restaurant in this town is looking for help, every contractor's looking for help. I don't know.
I think
It's mystifying.
We're looking for help.
Every school district's looking
Yeah.
for help,
Yeah.
everybody's looking for help. But there's an increase in population, increase in students. Where are these people falling in?
Where you gonna put them?
No, where you put them there,
Yeah.
mystifying.
Right.
Yeah,
But, back to your point about the reserves and maybe people not being familiar with
Yes.
them. I mean, we have reserves that are there to be spent on specific things.
Yes.
And,
some are kind of required by law.
right, but also the reserves are what give us our good financial standing in terms of borrowing. So it's like, it's good to have them there, but you gotta be really careful about what you're using it for, what kind of, rates that you get for borrowing. I mean, we're past the major hurdle of our borrowing at this point,
We
I
still
believe,
have
right?
ongoing borrowing for the
Right.
tax anticipation notes.
Right,
For the bands, for the bus purchases. So you
Right.
still have those in the works that reoccur every year.
right,
And
okay,
it's important to have a good rating so
right.
that you can keep rates as low as possible.
So, thank you. You guys have any other questions about this? So does anybody, we'll open up to questions from the public. So for either people who are here, also on LTV, we can take calls there too. So right now we have an audience member who's here, if you want to come up to the podium. Yeah.
Good evening, hi everybody.
Hi.
Well, I got this beautiful newsletter on the mail on Saturday, whatever day it was. And, so we are going to buy a new bus, right? That's the proposition, right?
And get rid of an
And-
older bus.
We had $117,000 from the transportation budget. Is that correct? It says it in here, in one of your pages.
That was one of the deductions we made.
Whatever it is.
We
We
reduced some
took out
staffing. and we-
1.5 drivers.
$117,498 got cut off to transportation. A driver and a half position got eliminated from the transportation, right?
Yes.
That we weren't able to fill.
Meanwhile, back in the ranch, kids are waiting for the bus for 50 minutes, 50. 50, not 5 minutes, 50 minutes. Meanwhile, I have been discussing with the superintendent for 2 years the transportation issues. Nothing to do with the bus drivers because they are overworked and underpaid. It has something to do with the way the Department of Transportation for the spring school is being managed. It's a disaster. I've had it. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is for a parent to go to work every day and not know if their child is getting picked up or not. Not a text message, not a smoke signal, nothing. And I have been nothing but patient, emailing the board, and I know you guys cannot comment, and I respect, and you guys are, you guys work very hard, emailing, meeting with the superintendent, doing everything. But I had it. And when I look at this, that you guys are buying a new bus and cutting $117,000 from the budget, I mean, that is really rude when you're asking me to pay a 5.5% of increase in my budget when my child is waiting 15 minutes to get on the bus. Thank you. And I know it's gonna go in smoke, because I've been talking about it for 2 years.
That's okay. Tatiana, it's, the reason that money was cut from the budget is because there's nobody filling these
They
positions.
just
We've
hired
had
a
it in
private
there.
in East Hampton.
They what?
They hired a private in East Hampton a month and a half ago. I can show you.
East
the
Hampton
resolution.
frequently pays their employees considerably more than we do, and we can't compete in that
You know
area.
what, Bart? After
So-
2.5 years of dealing with this issue, on taking the personal time, it's costing me money, the inefficiency of the transportation, yes. I had it. I really think that I don't care how you guys are fixing this, but it's gotta get fixed. Somebody's gonna get in a car accident. A kid, not my kid, maybe other kid is gonna get run over waiting on a busy intersection for a bus that is always late. That.
Can we put that on the work session,
Yes, I've spoken to you about putting it on the work session. We should have a review of that. Okay, yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
I'm gonna try to follow that up a little more calmly. What Tati's trying to say is that my son Alessandro sat on 3 Mile Harbor Road on the day of the state test. Literally, he said he was there for almost an hour. I mean, that is an absurd amount of time for a 9-year-old to be standing on a busy road where cars are doing 50, 60 miles an hour by there. It's not all the time, but it's basically an unknown whether they're going to be there 5 minutes late, 10 minutes late, 15 minutes. We know that the problem is that you're all jammed up in a way where, I mean, Deb said this at one of the board meetings, if the bus drivers are working from morning till night already, and then they have to take time off for anything, or they get sick or anything like that, it obviously becomes a really difficult situation because the routes are doubled up. Now, if you're looking forward into the future, and I don't have a crystal ball, but one of those drivers decides they don't want the job anymore, they find a higher paying job down the road, it becomes basically an emergency situation where you're short a driver all the time. And, right now, we're just doubling up routes every now and then, and this is happening. This is not really what I came up here to talk about. But I didn't really feel totally comfortable with the fact that we were just going to give up on it and put the money and eliminate the money when really we should be projecting for potential emergency situation down the road as opposed to saying we just can't do it. And it is an unsafe situation. And I don't know how there's no other parents up here upset about the fact that their kids, no predictability with respect to, and a lot of parents sit there at the bus stop with their kids. So that's one thing. It really, really should be dealt with because something could really, really go wrong and it could get worse down the road. That's a situation you cannot let fester. So that's that. On the budget side of things, I'm sure there's not going to be too many people that don't think this is a difficult budget to swallow. A $2 million increase on a $30 million budget is significant. I'm sure you guys know that. You've looked at everything. You've tried to figure out ways to cut this, cut that. The only thing that's a little bit of a mystery to me is to say, let's say people show up and they knock down the budget because it's so high. Then we're forced into a situation that's $2.5 million less. It's a little hard for me to comprehend how we wouldn't narrow that gap to make it more tenable or at least a little easier on the taxpayer to say, okay, I mean, you right now you have the option of the big increase or no increase at all and a really shoestring budget. That is, I know this is all said and done, but I mean.
There is another step in between there.
Yeah.
The budget can go out for another vote,
Yeah.
which we can either put it out at the same level, someplace in between, or go right to contingency, but you do get 2 votes before you are legally forced to go to
But can you
contingency.
change the budget between?
Yeah.
the two?
Yes, you can. If
So,
people,
I mean,
yes.
I don't know if I would have gone for the whole, bag of, whatever you want to call it, cherries or whatever, with the much higher amount, but, like I said, it makes a hard decision for taxpayer, because not only are you getting the increase from this, you're also, so a lot of people are also getting letters that their assessment's gone up. I mean, they could have put in a shed, and all of a sudden, I know my tax bill, I sold my house a year or 2 ago, I went to a smaller house, and my tax bill almost doubled. So, and now I'm getting a reassessment and a 5% increase, and I'm like, these are big numbers.
So the big chunk of this is coming from the fact that we're now starting to having to pay principal back for our loan for our expansion, which our community
Yeah.
voted on. And you have to pay that. When you say, it's like, we're going to need to build this, you got to pay for it. So that is obligatory.
No,
That is
it's
obligatory in this budget.
Principal and interest is gonna run about 1.1 million from here on out.
Right.
Just for the extension,
Yeah,
or for
just-
all that?
no,
That's
for
for
the
the
extension.
extension.
Just for the
Right.
additions.
So then that's an obligation. So any other cuts would have to come from other areas. When we've gone out there with a budget that we feel addresses all of our students' educational needs, their extracurricular activities, the things that all kids deserve to have in a school. Music and the sports and safety and things like that. We want our kids to have a well-rounded education here and have it in a space that they should have. And we're very fortunate that our community agreed with the building project of how, we were cramped here, we didn't have enough space for things, and supported that effort. And paying for that now goes along with that. So it's like, we want to say, this is what our kids need educationally, this is what we've committed to for our building, this is what we really think is what these kids should have. And it's up to the public to decide on that. I certainly don't want to have to cut program and things like that for kids if our community is willing to support it all. And that's what this budget is asking
I
for.
think Mike laid it out in one of the meetings, which you might have missed it, was the capital improvement cost for that, the increase the tuition cost, and then we're putting back in the
Yeah.
programs. We took those 3 numbers, but we took out the building, that's 1.1. Tuition, I forget that number, it was
about-
about
That was
800,000.
about $800,000 increase.
So if you took those 2 out of the 2 things, it's only like $3,000 or $4,000 more than last year.
Right.
But by doing all the subtractions and things we had to do. I mean, I don't think anybody wanted,
I mean, the only thing I can tell you is, like, with respect to that is, maybe it sounds like you had about 25, 30 kids more go over to the high school at 800,000. I mean, we're constantly complaining about what their tuition is. It's not really a function of their tuition, because their increase is probably more modest than the increase for the program component here at school. We have a 7% increase here. So I don't think they raised their tuition 7%. We just sent 25, 30 more kids over there.
Exactly.
So, but there's always the possibility that one year we will not send that many kids. The issue, again, is always that the budget never goes down. It goes up 2 million, and the 30 kids come back, and for some reason, it never stays the same. It's always going up by 2, 3, 4. And that's because when you have extra funds in the budget, you feel like, and you could just keep the increase down to 2%, you feel compelled to give it to the people that work here and to all the other stuff. And I think that's basically.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with
We
that.
had an $8 million reserve at some point here.
It was for
Not
capital
going back
improvement.
that long
But it
ago.
was
That was for the capital improvement.
That was a couple
We used
of
All I'm saying,
$6
what I'm
good.
saying is we went from having no money, we had another superintendent, they managed to save $8 million somehow. We had to actually give money back and to spend it. I remember all that.
Yeah, I think you might be confusing 2 things. There was a point where your unassigned fund balance can only be a certain percentage, which is 4%. And for a long time, we had more than that. And we had a lot more, and we weren't allowed to have that. So this was way before the capital improvement that we had to return that and pay that down. We put some of that into reserves. The 8 million you're talking about was in the reserve that's specifically for the capital improvement. That has already gone to pay for our project.
I know where the money, I'm not talking about where the money went, I'm talking about how we managed to acquire it. We had excess, but we had managed to keep things so tight that we were racking up millions of dollars in reserve.
Over
At some
years,
point,
over
yes.
years. though, not
Over
every single
years,
year,
yes.
Chris.
So that was where you have fund balance at the end, you put some into there instead of returning it to the taxpayer. So we did that for a few years to give us a leg up on the building project. When there is money left at the end of the year, that goes back in to bringing the total amount down, which we did this year, which we'll do next year. If we don't have, we've budgeted for an additional 7 kids at the high school. If we get 10 more kids at the high school, we got a problem. If we only get 3, then we have money that can go back to the taxpayers from that tuition at the end of the year.
Doesn't this 5% or so increase already include paying it down some?
Paying
what down?
what down?
Taking some of the reserve funds to bring it down?
We're already,
But yes.
we're already using 1.4 million as an appropriated fund balance to give back to the taxpayers.
Right,
Yes.
and we're still seeing a 5% increase
Yes.
after that.
Yep.
Yes,
What I mean to say is that the increase would actually have been a lot larger.
if we
That's what I'm
did not
trying
do,
to say.
yes.
We're gonna eat a 5% increase no matter what. Pat, your explanation is pretty on point in terms of, I understand what you're saying about the debt, the extra kids, and why we're getting slammed particularly in this calendar year. And going forward, obviously,
But Mike also ran a 5-year plan, which looks a little better the next couple of years.
I would think so, yeah, I mean.
This is the big hit. We've been pushing this problem off for the last 2 or 3 years. And I kept telling the board, we're getting to a point where we can't push it any further. And I think this is going to be the critical year, 22, 23. Once you get past this, you should start seeing it work out better.
Right, so, on the whole, like I said, my feeling of it is that, the tuition up there at the high school is probably not the mitigating factor. The bus situation probably, I think we went in the opposite direction of the direction we should have gone in terms of transportation. I know that there's not a whole lot of people complaining about it, but I can't imagine it's easy for anybody sitting at the bus stop. Or for the kids, sometimes they're in the school, you know what it is.
No,
Right, thank
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you, John, because what really happened is that the parents gave up and everybody's driving the kids to school and arranging their work schedule to accommodate the district. And that's not fair. That
Well,
really
there's
is
gotta
not
be
fair.
some element of truth to that. While we're trying to keep everything green and everything, people stopped taking the bus. And I did. I can tell you that I just started driving my kids because I was like, this is insane. I can't wait at the bus stop with my kids. I just can't sit there. It would be easier for me to literally drive them to school and then drive to work and know that they got to school instead of them calling me on a couple of occasions and telling me. I'm surprised I didn't get a phone call from Sandra last week, to be honest with you, about that. And then the last thing is you could probably explain this in 10 seconds, but the kindergarten playground, there's a $500,000 budget for this thing. And the playground, if I'm not mistaken, of that playground that we put in over here, was it a couple of $100,000?
No, the one out there was like 350, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
the new one here
The
on
new
the
one was
side
about
here,
350,
that's
which
part
was
of
part of
the capital
capital
project,
improvement.
Yeah.
Because it was under Land Tech's contract, and Land Tech had almost $3 million contract.
Right.
So they were able to give us some economies of scale to get a lower price. The problem is, as you're a contractor, right?
Yep.
You know the cost of materials has
I know what's happening,
skyrocketed.
yeah.
That's the problem what happened here, because last year when we put that out, it was for
3.25.
3.25. Now it's up to 480.
That is a huge.
And I'm being
money for a
told by our
playground.
architects, the reason is the cost of materials has escalated so much.
And I think maybe people don't realize that a big chunk of the playground had to get removed because it was unsafe. The whole wooden climbing structure, all that's been gone for a while because of a safety issue. So that it's been
No, I
a
know
reduced
that. I
playground.
know it's not easy to
Yes,
have
it
a
is.
install and not have a brand new playground.
With the pea gravel.
I don't know
Well,
if it's even.
That's another discussion for work session, Chris.
Yeah,
What's that?
that's tomorrow.
Work session,
Yeah.
that's one of our topics.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Before
budget-wise,
you move,
maybe.
one more thing, did you guys talk to the housing department in the CDBG? Because the community development grant works together and has grants for open space, parks. You should reach out to them, they may be able to give you some funding.
I have.
You have, and what did they tell you?
There's nothing right now.
But it will be open in 2022 this year, in July or May, you should reach out to them.
I do.
We could do that, but we do have money already set aside for this playground. We're not asking for any additional funds from the community for that. It's already there.
There's not a community, it's money given by the state.
No.
Oh, no, I understand that. I mean, in terms of, if it's, our community is not being asked for money for the project, it's being asked for permission to spend money that we already have that's already earmarked for that. It's just the community needs to say, yes, we agree that the school can use the money that they have already for that because of the way it's in a reserve.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so anyway, thank you very much for your
Like I
input.
was trying to say is that, it's a new school, it's a
Yeah.
new playground and everything like that. And I don't
Well,
know.
part of it is, and that's the other thing is, the old part has really cost us a lot of money in emergency repairs and one classroom totally falling apart because of years where there wasn't money or money wasn't spent to keep it up.
And we had a classroom last year that caved in, it was caving in.
Yeah, no,
It
no,
was
I
a
know.
good
I
section,
mean,
and
again,
luckily we
when I
had the
say
money in reserve to
playground,
repair it.
I mean,
That was 300,000.
And that hallway is,
It's not particularly unsafe, the nature of the playground, that people can get hurt. It's just, can't get hit by the swing, I mean, anyway, that's not even the point. The point I was trying to make was that, I don't know, it's probably improbable, but sometimes you could get, recycled equipment and things like that. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I think safety wise, our insurance company doesn't want us to have the pea gravel that's out there. I don't think you don't want recycled playground
they won't
equipment
let us.
for kids in terms of safety,
Yeah, I look at
legal issues.
recycled
That would be,
equipment like that is like buying a used car, and
Yeah.
buying something that's a headache.
yeah.
It's a
We
maintenance
did talk
issue.
about it, we're gonna talk about it more tomorrow
Yeah.
night.
Yes.
you know.
It's just, whatever.
But
no,
I mean, it
come
is
on back
$500
tomorrow.
million, it's
Very good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're discussing this tomorrow night.
Yes. So LTV, are there any callers at this time who have a question?
There are no callers on the line.
Okay. Anybody else? Any more questions here? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your being here for this presentation. And as we have mentioned, we will be having a work session tomorrow evening where we'll be going over our proposed new playground and a few other things. And that will be starting at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening.
Can we put the transportation on the June calendar for work session?
You want it on for tomorrow night?
I think June, we have a full schedule.
Or June, yeah.
June, do it for June, the first work session in June, because that would be a priority to work on that.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night's gonna be pretty full.
We still have the advertisement up for bus drivers. That's constant. It's always on our
And then I'll give
website.
you give us some more information on what's going on by June, rather than have it tomorrow night. Because I get the text, I'm surprised you don't get them.
I mean, I get the text all the time
I
too.
went to the travel.
It's gonna be late.
I actually went to the travel
Yeah,
to
four.
look at all my
That's
data.
right.
Not at 4, I get by 7, by 4, 5 and 6. I can tell you, because I went through the exercise to make sure that I wasn't missing any text. No, I didn't get anything.
All
There is
right.
a device that actually I mentioned to them, there is an app, kind of like, I take the train. Yeah, but we can look into it.
Right. Okay.
That will tell us where the bus is, right? And we don't
I'll
have to
track the
wait.
bus, we took it.
Yeah, we looked at that. Our Wi-Fi needs to get a lot better.
Well, they're gonna put up the
Let's
tower,
discuss.
they're gonna increase right, didn't I just say that they're gonna work on the emergency communications?
I sure hope so, but that's not going to be anytime
It's gonna
soon.
be at Can Road, the emergency tower only, it's an 85-foot tower on Can Road. That's what I heard,
What's that?
that's the last I heard.
It's not gonna cover a good portion of Springs?
Well, it's gonna be no cell phones, it's just the emergency services only.
Well, we can make an application, because this is.
Join the train,
What's that?
join the train,
Join the train, that's right, I mean.
everybody's been asking.
This
for
is
it.
I'm on
not-
board.
It's not for it's not for people on cell service.
It's not
for a
funny.
district
Yeah.
that's part of the government
Yeah.
that needs this service,
To the
honestly.
point,
Nobody's disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
We've seen it here already. We've had issues here, fire department out on Springs School Street, trying to get signal for their phones when we had a problem here.
I have
And
no
they couldn't get
service.
So we have to go to
Also
the
wrong
town
with the
about
house.
this.
It's out of our hands.
Well, and then if it's not a GPS, then maybe we should look into a dispatcher. Maybe we should train the transportation director or coordinator to use the computer. Maybe we should get a full-time secretary, something.
Thank you, Tati.
So
We'll discuss this. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure this is, super expensive, but could we have our own tower?
No,
That's I can't even go there right now. That's a whole nother
a whole nother thing.
kettle of fish,
Yeah, a whole
ball of
other
wax,
can of
whatever it
worms.
is.
You have to give up land,
Yeah.
school property, fall in the zone, have access to the point of tower. Where does that point come?
Cut a road in.
Cut a road in.
You know what, it's easy to fix the bus
Yeah.
situation.
Okay, so if we're all done here, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, LTV.
Transportation's going on.
Woo.